Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Kevin Iole from Yahoo Sports. I appreciate you joining me. I'm going to try to do these chats periodically. I'm having a lot of good success with my live chats on Facebook, and I want to extend that to YouTube. Just want to talk a little bit this week about some of the news. I've been on vacation for a couple of weeks. Let me start off in boxing, and then I'll get to MMA. But starting with boxing, the big news to my mind is that the Deontay Wilder-Tyson Fury match is set, and I absolutely love that. I think it's awesome that those guys, and this is really me, James, I'm here. I think it's awesome that they finally got that fight done. I mean, obviously, I would have preferred to see Anthony Joshua fight Wilder. But I don't think Anthony Joshua's promoter really wanted it at this point. So I think that's it's the next best thing that we could do. I mean, Fury is not, I don't think, the #2 heavyweight in the world, but he brings a lot of attention, a lot of excitement, and I think that is a really good fight for the heavyweight division. I think it will also help build Deontay Wilder's profile in the UK. Because Fury is a much bigger star. You're right. I'm going to get to it, guys. I'll get to your comments as well. Wilder is a much bigger star in the UK than he is in the United States. I don't think he's really hit too much in the US, but Wilder hasn't hit that much in the UK. So I think this really helps both guys, but really Wilder, who's in need of it. And if he has a good performance against Tyson, and the British fans get to like him, I think that really helps him as he goes forward to fight Anthony Joshua. So I was really happy to see that that fight was made. I like Wilder to win the fight. I think Wilder, has holes. Hey, look, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know. If you follow boxing, you know that Wilder is not a classic boxer, and he's not necessarily a Mike Tyson puncher, but he is a good athlete. He does hit hard, and he showed me something. I remember talking to Felix Trinidad one time about guys who got dropped, and Felix, especially earlier in his career, got dropped a lot. And he said, it doesn't matter if you get dropped, it matters if you get up. And he pointed out how many times he had gotten up. And I think you saw from Wilder in that fight with Luis Ortiz. Hey, Luis Ortiz is a terrific puncher. Not necessarily the best fighter in the world, but a terrific puncher. And I think, Wilder was able to deal with, the trouble. And he showed the ability to come back from when he had some adversity. So I like that. I thought that was impressive, by him. And to my way of thinking, I think that makes him it makes him a little bit better because he knows now, hey, when the chips are down, I can come back. And so I think that's a really good thing. So I was happy to see that. This week on Saturday, Top Rank has a show in Phoenix, and Ray Beltran, who has one of the 135-pound belts, he won a world title. And Ray Beltran, if you don't know his backstory, it was amazing. He was brought to the U.S. By his family, and he was by his mother. It was illegal what was here, tried to get a green card, and finally he got his citizenship papers earlier in the year, and he won a world title. And it was just an amazing story of all the things that he had gone through, including the trouble that he had in getting the big win. And so he finally got the world title. He's going to fight on Saturday, as I said, on ESPN. And then he's fighting Pedraza. And then if he wins that, the winner will fight Vasyl Lomachenko. And I think that will be bye-bye title. I'm really disappointed. I was hoping that we could see Lomachenko continue in the bigger fights. I would have loved to see Top Rank pursue a fight with Mikey Garcia. But they chose not to do that. And, so it's unfortunate that we're going in that direction. As far as MMA, UFC has a show this week. Should be a really good main event, and I hope you catch my stories. I did a story on Justin Gaethje the other day. Today, just a few minutes ago, as I talk, I posted a story that I did on James Vick. So that fight is happening on Saturday, Justin Gaethje versus James Vick in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'll tell you, that is a tough fight to call. I think it's going to be an outstanding fight. I mean, I think Vick is a rising star. I mean, look at what he's done. You know, the only thing that Vick hasn't done to this point, he's 13-1. He's got 10 finishes. He hasn't stopped a really big name. And that's his big problem, you know, right now. But I think if he beats Justin Gaethje, that gives him the momentum that he needs and gives him that high-profile win that he needs. And Gaethje, I mean, look, you know, a lot of people are talking about, oh, Gaethje's lost his last 2 fights, and, you know, he's not the same guy, or the competition's a lot better. And I think there's something to be said for that. Hey, look, but look at who he lost his last 2 fights to, guys. He lost to Eddie Alvarez in a tremendous fight, and then he lost to Dustin Poirier. Alvarez and Poirier. Alvarez is the former lightweight champion. Poirier could be the future champion. Poirier is certainly a tremendous fighter, really on a big roll. Nobody in the division other than Khabib is hotter than him. And that was fight of the night too. I mean, they were both just terrific fights. And so if Vick is able to get past Justin, I think that will make him a star. I don't know if I agree with superstar. King K asked me, when will Nick Diaz come back? And I don't think he's ever going to fight MMA again. I don't think he's interested in it. You know, it's been 3 years. He's served his penalty. I just don't know that he has the motivation to go out and fight. You know, I suppose, you know, Nick and to a lesser degree his brother Nate, for a long period of time, you know, what did they do? They fought when they needed money. You know, they ran out of money. They needed a big payday. They would go out. They'd schedule a fight. They would make the fight, and then you would see them disappear for a while. So you know, that is. I don't think Nick is going to come back. So that is something that I think is really kind of disappointed. You know, James said he's too busy getting high on marijuana. Yeah, I just don't think he wants to fight. I think Nick is one of those guys that had a great talent for fighting, but you know, his motivation to do it was never that great. And I think now that he's successful, he doesn't have to. Another question: do I think if Conor wins, he will stay in the division again, stall the division again? You know, I don't think Conor is going to be around all that long. I really don't. I honestly am surprised that he's fighting again. I did not think that we would see that happen. You know, I didn't think that we would see him fight again. I thought after the Mayweather fight that he would probably walk away, but he chose to fight again, and you know, I'm glad that he is. It's good. It's going to be good for Khabib to fight him. It's going to be good for all you guys, all the fans, to see that fight. It's going to be a fun fight. But I think, you know, that if he fights again, there's only a handful of fights that he'll take. I mean, he's at a point where he doesn't really need to take a really huge fight. And so, I mean, a lot of fights, and I don't think he's going to go in there and start making title defenses and against guys. The only way he's going to fight is if it's a fight that's going to be a massive, huge fight. George St. Pierre type fight. You know, I think, you know, you could see him go after a welterweight title at some point in the future, but I think it depends on who has the title. I don't think he's going to go after Tyron Woodley because I don't think that's a real good matchup for him. Woodley's a big physical guy. Darren Till's a big guy too, but I think Darren Till's more a guy that McGregor feels like he might be able to beat. So, you know, but I think regardless, when you talk about Conor, when he fights, it's going to be a massive fight, and he's not going to just take B-level opponents. And I don't mean to insult anybody when I say that. I just mean, you know, it's going to be fights that, you know, get the whole world talking, have all the media from around the world come to watch the fight. I think that's really what I think we will see. So that, you know, that's my opinion there. I don't think he is going to do that. My early take, if you care about my early take on the fight, I think Khabib wins the fight. I think that the grappling is going to be too much. But here's the thing that I point out to everybody. Conor's weakness is Khabib's strength. Khabib's weakness is Conor's strength. We saw against Al Iaquinta at UFC 223 that Khabib's stand-up, it's not on that elite level. And the fights start, and all it takes is one shot. Khabib could be dominating that fight, but if there's a stand-up, Conor come in and land a kick or a punch, it could be trouble for Khabib. Now, I'm going to pick Khabib, and I think he's going to win in impressive fashion. But I would say just don't discount Conor's chances, because I think, that's the one thing that's great about this sport, is that there are so many ways to win. And I think this particular fight is going to be evidence of that theory. So that's one of the things I would say in that main event. Talking about Daniel Cormier, he's the light heavyweight champ, the heavyweight champ. You saw him giving some shade to Brock Lesnar the other day after Brock's appearance on SummerSlam, the wrestling pay-per-view. And Brock will be fighting for the title against Daniel Cormier next year. His suspension, Brock is on a PED suspension, which was halted when he announced his UFC retirement. And now that he's coming back, it's come back, and I don't think his suspension ends until mid-January. So I think you'll see that fight happen sometime in March. I doubt that Cormier will fight another time, unless it happens that John Jones is cleared very, very quickly, and maybe you see Cormier Jones 3 headline Madison Square Garden. They don't have a main event for that show yet, and certainly Dana White would love that to be on there. But I don't know that we're going to see that. So, anyways, that is, I think, a far-fetched idea, though. I don't know that we're going to see Jones back, because you have to get it done. Here's what I think. What some people don't realize is there's real serious deadlines that they have to get out to. The UFC has to get to the cable companies, the satellite companies that broadcast these fights, that have the artwork, the marketing campaign, all the information about what the fight's going to be. And so if you miss that, you really can't go forward, especially a big fight like Cormier and Jones would be. And so that is generally about 10 weeks out, but you can push it to about 8 weeks. So if you think about it, if they're going to fight in Madison Square Garden in November, you go back, and that means you've got to be in sometime in mid-September, really. Maybe you could push it into the third week of September. That means that John has roughly a month to get cleared by USADA, and then come to a deal with the UFC on the fight. Now, I think he would come to a deal with them fairly quickly if he were cleared. But USADA's not working on the UFC schedule, and I think you have to understand that. USADA is working on their own schedule. Anyways, I'm happy if you have any more questions to pop those on there, and if there's anything, if you have any suggestions what you want me to do, I will give a little bit of news. We're going to be starting a Yahoo Sports MMA podcast. I'm going to probably have a co-host with me. We haven't determined everything yet, but we hope to have it up and running sometime in September. And I'm toying with different things, but here's what I'm thinking right now. I think we're going to do a 5-day-a-week podcast. 4 days a week, it'll just be news, notes, tidbits, that kind of thing. And 1 day a week, I'll have a longer show that will be interview with big names in MMA, whether it be Dana White or Conor, Khabib, Scott Coker, whoever that may be that's making news at the time. We'll get those people on, and we'll have them on our podcast. And I always, in my job, I want to do what you guys want, so I'm always open to suggestions, what you think. But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. A 5-day-a-week podcast, 4 days, it'll be a 10 to 15 minute, short, some, maybe a quick thought here, quick thought there. Like, in other words, if I had been doing it this week, yesterday we had the news broke that Cyborg is going to fight Amanda Nunes for the featherweight title at UFC 232. I could come out and make some commentary about that, discuss that news briefly, and then maybe do that, more in depth when we get closer to fight time. That's the kind of thing that I think I'm looking to do, and so you can look for that. Podcasts are a big initiative at Yahoo Sports now. We have a great baseball podcast out there. A couple other sports are now getting up and running. And so we'll have MMA, and Chris Mannix and I are going to join forces and do our boxing podcast. Chris right now does a really good podcast. It's on a different podcast network, but we're going to get that over to Yahoo Sports, and Chris and I will team up on that. And we have good chemistry together, and we will do our boxing podcast. As far as my MMA podcast, like I say, I'm going to have a co-host. Not sure who is going to get hired yet. I have a couple of names in mind, but I want to keep those as a surprise until I hire one of them and see what I want to do. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to it, and I really look forward to the give and take and some of the input that I get from you guys. I want to make everything I do interesting to you. You're not always going to agree with my opinion, just like I won't always agree with your opinion. And that's not what it's about. It's about discussing things factually, intellectually, breaking things down the right way, what we think is going to happen, and just try to make everybody enjoy this great sport, this great combat sports where it's exploding. There's so much fights. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, and I've been a fight fan. You see I'm wearing my, let's see if I can get this on here, my Eddie Futch boxing trainer. Eddie is long gone. God rest his soul. He was one of boxing's great trainers. But back in the day, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, obviously there wasn't any MMA. And the martial arts, other than wrestling, which I don't think people in those days considered wrestling martial arts, it wasn't getting a lot of attention. And it was just boxing, and there was boxing on TV and really good fights on TV, but you didn't have a widespread distribution like you do now. And we have DAZN starting. They're streaming on the 22nd of September in the United States. They're already up and running in other parts of the world, but they'll start in the U.S. with that Povetkin Joshua heavyweight title fight. They have a real good fight on October 6th in Chicago, deep fight card. Unfortunately for them, that's going up against McGregor Nurmagomedov, and that's going to be a tough sell for them on that particular day to get anybody. But ESPN Plus has a great boxing and offering, and they're going to add MMA with the UFC on January 1st. And I should mention that Bellator is going to be on DAZN. There's going to be MMA content on there with a lot of Bellator's great stuff that they're going to have. So this is really a great time to be a fight fan. You're out there, and there's a lot of stuff for you guys to find and watch. And so we want to break it all down. There's certain things I'm not really that much into that I probably won't talk about. I don't care for the bare knuckle fighting. So, unless there's a huge audience for it, which my sense is that there is not, I'm probably not going to get into that. But in boxing and MMA, I'm willing to do anything and see what happens. So I hope we can make these chats helpful to you, that you'll like them as time goes by, that you'll participate by asking questions and whatnot. And if I can be of any help whatsoever, please let me know. So I'm going to wrap right now, and I will hit you later. I'll put up a schedule of events at some point when I'm going to be doing my podcast. I'll also try to do these live chats with you guys more often so we can make them useful, have a little bit more fun, have a little bit regular schedule. Hope all is well. Enjoy the fights, everybody, and we will see you soon.